in their chosen subject. I have been looking at many research papers, and I've been interact with many research scholars in the last 1 decade or so. Some of the topics chosen and some of the way it's being done, I don't want to get into that at this stage. This is not the forum for that. So the key, I will say, originality, original thesis, and whether it contributes some new knowledge in this chosen subject and not repeating something else done somewhere else for the purpose of getting this qualification. Now, even the full title, right? If you see, we've all been saying PhD, but what's PhD? It's Doctor of Philosophy. So why Doctor of Philosophy? It's got some mysterious ring. So have I become a doctor? Everybody calls me doctor. It's not that kind of doctor. Now, when I say Doctor of Philosophy, have I studied philosophy deeply? No. Probably many of us haven't, unless we want to. So what is the connection? Why we are talking about philosophy when we have done the ultimate research and obtained PhD, probably in management, maybe in engineering, maybe in technology, or etc. Of course, it starts from the Latin term philosophy, doctor. The word philosophy here refers to the original meaning. Philo means friend or lover of wisdom. So originally, this signified to those individuals who had achieved a comprehensive general education in the fundamental issues of the present world. Today, of course, with lots and lots of specialization, subspecialization, the generality has lost. And the doctor of philosophy, but still requires the love of wisdom as it applies to individuals who are pursuing the knowledge, even in much more specialized field, any of the discipline, particularly even in the STEM areas. So we will broadly talk about the philosophy and ethics as it applies to research, bereft of jargons and hard stuff. Because of paucity of time, then it is not the occasion. And as Dr. Bonga said, maybe later, when this is converted into a full-fledged course and in universities, we will take that forum to dwell much deeper into it. So whatever I'm discussing today, whatever I've discussed so far is based on my experience, my collection of readings in multiple places. So please take it as it is and then see how we can discuss further and benefit mutually. So what we are trying to do, rather I am trying to do, is to get an outsider's glimpse to these two subjects. So philosophy is concerned with making explicit the nature and significance of ordinary and scientific beliefs and investigating intelligibly the concepts by means of importance, rational argument concerning the presuppositions, implications, and interrelationships. And when we talk about rational investigation of the nature and the structure of reality, that area is called metaphysics. And when we are talking about the resources and the limits of knowledge, we call it as epistemology. And when you're talking about the moral aspect, the principle and import of moral judgment involved in the study, we call it as ethics. So develop philosophy, its origin is wisdom, which is different from knowledge. Because knowledge accumulation can take place, right, in any number of ways. But applying that knowledge is very, very important. Because I've read acquiring knowledge is enough, but don't stop there because applying knowledge is important so that the skills are developed. Don't stop there. Acquiring skills are not enough. and we will have to apply them. And not only we should apply them appropriately, but we should also be doing it ethically. We should also have the right type of temperament and attitude so that that generates the right amount of benefit to the industry, business, and the society. So, in that way, philosophy is a way of thinking about the world, the universe, and the society. It asks the basic fundamental questions of the basic human thought, the nature of the universe, the connections between various aspects that we see. In a way, the ideas in philosophy, the hardcore philosophy, are often general and seem to be abstract. But the philosophy is actually about the real world as we see, as we observe, and as we infer. And that's exactly what research are supposed to do. See, observe, comprehend, infer, communicate. And ethics, for example, is all about how to be good in our day-to-day lives. Metaphysics, part of it, asks about how the world works and what it is made of and how it is relevant to us. Sometimes people talk about personal philosophy. No, my philosophy is to XYZ. My philosophy is not to do this. My philosophy is to do something, something. Fine. That is the way a person thinks about the world. So through his paradigm, what he is thinking about something is what he is expressing. But here we are not talking about the individual's paradigm, the way of thinking, but what we are discussing is about the common acceptable philosophy as it may apply to research and not about people's personal philosophies as it applies to individual or his self. Now it's very interesting, many of us have noted that all major science, physical sciences, natural sciences, all these disciplines, some centuries back, were all considered part of philosophy. They're all offshoots from philosophy. As the speculation about nature analysis became more and more developed, and these subjects started branching away. And this process continues. Now, psychology is again is one of the splits from philosophy. Decision theory, applied ethics, and many such studies have all branched out basically from philosophy. Today we are looking at the parts, we are not looking at the whole. So understanding the basis of philosophy probably is useful because this will help us to look at new kinds of science and new disciplines as we move forward. When you look at things as a whole and not in fragmented fashion. Philosophy inquires into the nature of matter, time, space, causality, evolution, mind, etc. But the fundamental thing about philosophy is it's the art of thinking all the things logically, systematically, and persistently. And also thinking rationally, systematically of the reality as a whole. Again, does it not resonate? It is what a researcher is supposed to do. Thinking is a hard job. Rational thinking is still harder. So philosophy, I would say, is a coherent understanding of everything put together, a kind of synoptic view of the universe around us. One more approach, as being more of a practical person, that's what I claim to be. Philosophy is the activity of working out the right way of thinking about things. Now, distinguish about thinking about things and working out the right way of thinking about things. Am I confusing? Thinking about things is very important. Now, working out how to think about things the right way is even more important. So in the second case, what do we do? We step back from what we are doing or what we are trying to do and start asking questions about what are the presuppositions, what we are doing, is it the right way of doing things? So when doing physics, I had been a student of physics and subsequently I moved over to wireless and electronics, etc., later. We investigate the physical reality by constructing experiments, measurements, formulating theories, etc. But when I talk about the philosophy of physics, we'll be asking, what do we mean by physical reality? How do experiment results confirm or disconfirm a certain hypothesis? Or what distinguishes a good scientific theory from a bad one? Theory anybody can propose, right? Again, economics says anybody can propose a theory, and the theory stands for some time till it is challenged. When it is challenged, there comes something called antithesis. And antithesis starts getting more and more prevalent. And the thesis and antithesis are debated ferociously, and there appears some kind of synthesis. And the synthesis in due course becomes a thesis, and then the process goes on. Now, what about medicine? When we practice medicine, what are we basically trying to do? Heal the people, treat the people according to correct best medical theories. A classic example is the COVID case. What are we doing now? We're all grappling in the dark. We know that something is terribly wrong. We know we want to do something. Everybody is desperate the world over. But we still don't know how. The vaccine is far away. All shortcuts are being done. Nowhere in the history of science shortcuts have ever worked. They're all like bandaging, right? In an accident case, just for the time being, it doesn't help. So, but when we do the philosophy of medicine, what do? We step back and think whether the concepts of these medical theories, do they make sense? And what the health and sickness really mean? Are we doing symptomatic treatment and research? Are we going deeper into the aspects of it? So all of them are actually essence of philosophy. I talked about thinking about thinking the right way. What is right? One way of saying it's correct. The meaning of right can be correct. So it's the correct way of thinking. So we say what or which is correct. But then we need a reference point because any superlatives always have a reference point. So a priori intuition or after experiencing or experimenting, some kind of reference point we say and then say correct or we were correct or now we want to be correct, etc. But the another interesting way of looking at the right is we can say the right way, meaning the creative side of the brain. Now, creativity comes to every one of us, right? It's not like somebody is creative, somebody is not. It's a matter of opportunity. It's a matter of training. Whether through conscious effort or unconscious reaction, it is unique in each one of us. It's a vital concept, the way we think. Now, the best way to improve our ability to think, perhaps, is to spend time thinking about it. Imtiaz, I want to share a small video at this stage. Can you help me do that?
Sir, I think you can also share it, sir.
No, I've already done the screen sharing.
Okay.
I'll just do that.
Okay. Okay.
Can you all hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yes, Cynthia. Yeah, but video is coming now. Just see. It's not coming.
No, sir. Video is not there, sir.
Okay, stop this here. Yeah. Hmm. Share the screen. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, correct. Ah, one second.
Of our philosophy MOOC.
It's coming.
So, in this week of the course, our job is to try and understand a bit about what philosophy as a subject is. So, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to tell you
Yeah.
what I think philosophy is, and then I'm going to try and illustrate that conception of philosophy by talking a bit about how that relates it to some other subjects. Then we're going to move on to thinking about how some other features of philosophy follow from that definition of philosophy that I'll have given you. Then we're going to move on to thinking about how we actually go about doing philosophy, and we're going to do that by looking at our first couple of examples of philosophical arguments and thinking about how we should understand them and criticise them. Then finally, we're going to finish by thinking about what it might mean to look for the best way or the right way of thinking about something. And we're going to look at the views of a couple of great philosophers from history who are going to help us think about that question. So let's get started. What is philosophy? Well, it's a difficult question to answer. And I think the best answer that we can give is a very simple one. Philosophy is just the activity that philosophers get up to. So, one important thing about that is that philosophy isn't just a subject, it's an activity that we have to engage in, it's something that we have to do. And to really get a good sense of what it is to engage in it, what it is to do it, and to do it well, you're going to have to do more than just listen to what I have to say about philosophy this week. The best way to work out what that activity is all about and how to be good at it is going to be to work your way through the course and try to engage and think about and understand all the different topics and problems and arguments that we're going to consider there. So, by doing that, you'll hopefully get a much better sense of what philosophy is all about than I'm going to be able to give you this week. But I can at least try and make a start on saying what I think philosophy is. And here's the definition that I'm going to be working with this week. I think that philosophy is the activity of working out the best way to think about things. So, what do I mean by that? Well, let's clarify it first of all by thinking about how that relates it to some other subjects. So one question that you might have immediately about that definition is, don't all subjects try and think about things in the right way? Okay, from astronomy to zoology, everything tries to think about whatever topic or domain it's concerned with in the right way. And I think that that's true, but I think that what the philosopher needs to say in response to it is to distinguish between the activity of getting on with thinking in a particular way and the activity of stepping back from that way of thinking and working out the right way to think about things. So it's that distinction between thinking in a particular way and working out whether some way of thinking is the right way that I think corresponds to the distinction between some particular academic subject and doing philosophy about that subject. So let's take physics as an example. If you're a physicist, then you do things like collect data, do measurements, construct experiments, and try and build theories on that basis. Okay, when you're doing that, you're getting on with the activity and the way of thinking that's characteristic of physics. But we can step back from the activity of doing physics and thinking in that way that we do when we're doing physics. And we can ask questions like, what is it for data to confirm or refute a theory in physics? What are we doing when we're trying to measure reality? And what does it even mean to try and understand reality in terms of its basic physical constituents? So when we step back from the actual process of doing physics in that way and start asking questions about the ways of thinking and the ways of carrying on that we're employing when we're doing physics, then we're making the transition from doing physics to doing the philosophy of physics. Okay, we're stepping back and trying to work out the right way of thinking about things. So for our second example, I want to think about medicine. Specifically, I want to think about the way they would have practiced or thought about medicine in medieval times. So in those times, as I understand it, they tried to explain all different diseases and tried to treat all different diseases in terms of what they called 4 humours. So there was blood, black bile, phlegm, and yellow bile. And if you had anything wrong with you, then they tried to understand that disease in terms of some kind of imbalance of those 4 humours and treat it accordingly. Now, obviously, we don't think about medicine in that way anymore. We don't think that that's the right way to think about diseases and their treatment. So, how can that change in our way of thinking come about? Well, one way it could come about is just by us asking questions about what it really means for a disease to be an imbalance of black bile and yellow bile or whatever. So we might just ask ourselves whether we really understand what it means to make that identity claim that a disease just is that. Or we might look at all the other things in the body that seem to also be important to our physical health and the treatment and curing of disease, and think that there seems to be a lot of evidence that they seem important to our health as well. So there are things other than blood and bile and phlegm that are important to being healthy. How does our medical theory explain that? Or we might just notice that our ways of treating diseases and trying to cure people according to this framework really aren't very successful. Okay, so different ways in which we might be prompted to revise our conception of what the best way of thinking about diseases and how to treat them are. So notice from the quick discussion of physics and that quick discussion of medieval medicine that it looks like there are a couple of different ways that we can be prompted to revise our way of thinking about things, revise our conception of what the best way of thinking in a particular domain is. One sort of way can be making that revision from the inside. So making that revision from just thinking about the subject. So when I was talking about philosophy of physics, I was talking about asking questions such as, what is it for data to confirm or to refute a theory? And those are questions that can change the way that we think about physics just from the armchair, if you will, okay, just by thinking about them. In the case of medicine, I suggested that one way that we might be prompted to revise our medical framework was by thinking about whether or not we really understand what it means for a disease to be an imbalance of different humours. So again, that would be what we might call a challenge to our way of thinking from the inside. Right? We don't have to go out and be confronted by the world to change the way that we're thinking about things in those cases. But another way that we might be prompted to change the way that we're thinking about things is from the outside. So this is probably particularly clear with the example of medieval medicine. So presumably one of the reasons why we don't subscribe to that way of thinking about diseases and their treatment anymore is because we just noticed that it wasn't very successful. Okay, when we try and understand diseases and treat diseases by thinking about them and acting towards them in that way, just a lot of people seem to die and we don't seem to do very well. We might think that we can think about similar examples in physics. So perhaps the sorts of discoveries that were made in quantum mechanics at the start of the 20th century might give us examples here. One way you might think about those discoveries is that they appeared to give us results just by looking at the world and doing experiments on it and observing what we found there that seemed to show that we had to really change quite fundamentally some of our notions about how we understand the world. So you might think that some of the results from quantum mechanics put pressure on basic intuitions that we have about what it is for one thing to be able to cause another. So there might be results in quantum mechanics that suggest that one thing can instantaneously affect another thing that's very far away from it and that doesn't seem to have any connection to it. There might also be some results from quantum mechanics that suggest that a thing can be like a wave in some respects, but like a particle in some other respects. Whereas it seems that according to our common sense conception of reality, a thing can be either a wave or a particle, but not both. So that's a very quick and crude characterization of some stuff about quantum mechanics, but it's just by way of example to suggest how the world can throw up reasons for us to change our way of thinking about things just as surely as we can get reasons just by thinking about it from our armchair. And so it's that feature of philosophy, the feature that by taking our ways of thinking about things out into the world and testing them against the world, we can be prompted to change and revise them. That means philosophy has this really close relationship with a lot of other subjects. So in our two examples, we've seen how it can have a close relationship with physics and with medicine. By getting on with the business of doing physics and doing medicine, we can be given reason to step back and think about or rethink what we think are our best ways of understanding the world. And this goes for a whole lot of other subjects as well. So for example, in a future week of the course, we're going to be thinking about some issues in the philosophy of mind, and we're going to see how developments in artificial intelligence and computer science led to people stepping back and trying to think about new ways to think about what it actually is to have a mind. So in this section, I've suggested that philosophy is the activity of stepping back and working out the right way of thinking about things. And I started off by saying that philosophy, in an important sense, was an activity, not just a subject. So far I've tried to say a little bit about what that activity is and illustrated it with a couple of examples.
We are back. Can you hear me? Hello? 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 My
Hello, sir.
PPT is coming. Seen?
Hello, hello, sir.
I just did that. Only one second. Share screen. Okay. Now, okay, PPT is on now. And share. Is it okay now? That where is it? Now, is it share? Huh? Yeah, I'll do that. Now it's coming.
Yes, sir, we
The
can
voice
see
is
that.
also coming.
Now we can see that now.
Thanks. Thank you, friends, for your patience. It's again a reminder that I've got many things to learn. This new technology, etc., how to use. Okay. So if I'm audible, we'll proceed further. Everything is seen proper. Can I go ahead? So we talked about thinking about the right things, thinking about thinking itself. We know the example of Copernicus. Instead of accepting the previously known things, he stepped back and looked at and said, no, the sun has to be the center. Even though all the items in the galaxy are same, now sun has to be in the center. He started thinking differently, and that's how the current modern theory has come up. Therefore, the method of philosophy is not just a reflection, but it's a rational reflection. So experience facts, events, phenomena, and then we should reduce them to system by rational reflection upon each one of them. In that way, it is empirical because it is not divorced from just an experience or a feeling. But looking at philosophically, it cannot be just only numbers, quantitative, but it should be consistent with all the facts of experience so that it is harmonized with one another and becomes a unified system. Science, engineering, technology, is all about quantitative view rather than qualitative view. So the qualities of things, etc., we are also converting into some kind of quantitative formula and mathematical equations. We measure, weigh, compute, describe, etc., etc. But when it comes to philosophy, it starts taking a qualitative view of the entire universe. It is not satisfied with only the quantitative formula, which is just a logical abstraction. It considers the qualities, unique features of every individual things and then taken together. That unified thinking is the hallmark of philosophical thinking.
Hello, madam. Yeah.
Observation, experimentation, etc., are all methods of science.
I said yes.
Now, as we already saw, the philosophical method is a rational reflection and framing hypothesis. Both science and philosophy aim at reducing the complex fact into simpler one. Therefore, science without philosophy are an aggregate without unity, a kind of body without a soul. And philosophy without science is a soul without the body, right? Poetry devoid of its dreams. Okay. Now I'll again raise a fundamental question at this stage, maybe just to reconfirm for understanding. What is research? Research, we say, is a systematic investigation designed to develop generalizable knowledge. So focused, systematic study undertaken is a kind of inquiry seeking new evidence so that we get new knowledge and new understanding. And it's an attempt to find out something in a systematic and scientific manner. Now we can combine together and then try to kind of explain or define research in this following way. Research aims to generate new information, knowledge, understanding, or some other relevant cognitive good, and does so by means of a systematic investigation, analysis, interpretation, and publication with integrity, following sound ethical principles throughout. I think if this kind of explanation or a new definition is generally acceptable by us, I think probably this will lay a framework for the entire new attempt that we are trying to do to study the philosophy and ethics in research and the various practical issues which are being given in terms of the process of research and in terms of publicizing the results of the research. So purpose of a responsible research, not any research. I'm talking about a responsible, not research for research sake. It's a responsible research. Is one which is conducted with integrity is the key for a genuine advancement, not just for that individual, for a limited purpose, or for that institution, but it is for the country and the society at large. So I'll just do some of the things in passing because the intention is not to go deep into teaching philosophy, but in terms of understanding philosophy as it applies to research. So the key subdivisions of philosophy: epistemology is a theory of knowledge, ontology or metaphysics is a theory of reality, and axiology is a theory of values. Now, philosophy goes beyond facts and values and seeks to explain and interrelate them. Epistemology, look at the Greek origin. Episteme means knowledge or understanding, and it refers to the nature and origin of knowledge and truth itself. It proposes that divine revelation, not necessarily, I'm not talking about the religious sense, experience, logic and reason, and intuition. These influence how teachings, learnings, understandings are come about in the classroom and also in the research setup. Ontology and metaphysics, and it considers questions like what is real? What we are seeing, is it real? Or is it just a perception? So considering of reality as an external creation or an internal construct, again, has a deep influence on the beliefs and the perspectives. Axiology is more about principles and values, ethics and aesthetics. Ethics is the questioning of morals and personal values. Aesthetics is examining what is enjoyable, what is tasteful, and what is desirable. So when we are looking at research philosophy, what we are doing is to develop knowledge in a particular field, the systems and beliefs and assumptions about the development of knowledge. That's very, very important. Many times people plunge into some kind of research by simply keeping outcome in mind or replicating a certain process, rather than trying to look at the basic systems of beliefs and assumptions. At every stage in research, we make number of assumptions. And the assumptions are automatically built in and we proceed further. And we don't step back and ask whether those assumptions are really correct or valid. I don't know. So all these assumptions which we make are about realities encountered in research. We call it ontological assumptions, or about the human knowledge, epistemological assumption, or about the values, axiological assumptions. So all these assumptions, individually and together, shape how we understand the research question and how do we interpret the findings. So it is very, very important to document these assumptions and also the questions that we have asked about each of these assumptions, and then proceeded further with some kind of clarity as to why we have assumed something and why we should proceed further. So this will form the basis of the choice of methodology, the research strategy, and the data collection techniques and subsequent analysis procedures, so that all the elements of research fit together. Now we will move to the next portion, which we call ethics. It's also called moral philosophy. And again, interesting, it's a branch of philosophy. This involves systemizing, defending, recommending concepts of what is right and wrong behavior. When we look at etymology, it says relating to one's character, which itself comes from character, moral nature. And later on, of course, they traveled all around and then came into English. Very abstract, difficult to understand, even more difficult to practice. Not because we don't understand, but we always go with the colloquial meaning, at least not to do something which is wrong. So what is wrong? So what is not desirable? So this is the big question. That is where, as we see a little later, whatever the codes we draw, whatever the procedures law we bring, the interpretation in terms of the right and wrong becomes very, very important. So it requires much more explanation and mentorship than just codification. So again, going back into ethics, we can further go into meta-ethics concerning the theoretical meaning of moral propositions at the higher plane, the normative ethics, the practical meaning of determining the moral course of action, or the applied ethics in terms of what a person is obligated to, what is permitted to, what he can and cannot do in specific situations, or in a domain of action, or in a given circumstance, or given in a particular society. Research ethics involves application of the fundamental ethical principles to the research area, namely design, implemented research, particularly involving human experimentation and animal experimentation. The medical science, natural science, many of them go into the animal side. The other research gets into studying people and studying things on people and studying things by the people and studying things for the people. So all these various aspects of academic scandal, including scientific misconduct, etc., all of them are all offshoot of not having comprehended what should be the right ethics to be applied in a given domain or a given circumstance. So ethics, broadly, we know is a moral principle of right and wrong. Research ethics, incorporating ethical principles into research practice, when right from the research intention and the idea itself, and then beyond completion of research and the publication of research. Therefore, research ethics refers to a diverse set of values, norms, and institutional regulations, which will help constitute the and regulate the scientific activity, or we can say scientific research technological activity. So it is to ensure that the research is conducted in a way that serves the interests of individuals, but not just the individuals, but groups and society as a whole. So the ethical soundness, the protection of confidentiality, the process of informed consent are all very essence of research ethics. We'll see these things very, very briefly. Trust is the bedrock of everything. The entire research program is built on a foundation of trust. Researchers trust the results reported by other researchers or data providers, right? And that we believe they are sound. Society trusts that the results of the research reflect. So the individual, the institution backing him or her, they reflect an honest attempt to describe everything accurately and then without bias. And that society takes it for granted. And when they find it otherwise later, hell breaks loose. And let's not give occasion to go to that level. But this trust will endure only if the research community devotes itself for upholding, transmitting true values associated with the entire ethical research conduct. I talked about informed consent. What does it really mean? In any research on or with human beings, each potential subject must be adequately informed, not just informing that I'm coming to do experiment on you, I'm coming to take information from you, but the aims, methods, source of funding sometimes, any possible conflict of interest, and the institutional affiliations of the researcher, and the anticipated benefits, and also the potential risk of the study, and sometimes the discomfort to the respondent, either immediately or even delayed, must all be communicated properly. Not just communicating or educating them. We should also give them the right to abstain from participating in the study or withdraw consent at any time. Right? And after ensuring that the subject and the study has understood this information and the intention, then the researcher should obtain the subject's freely given informed consent, preferably in writing. If for some reason the particular subject or the respondent cannot give it in writing, then at least the non-written consent must be formally documented, witnessed, and also countersigned by the research supervisor, right, or the institution. Therefore, the various ethical issues to be taken care of are taking responsibility to secure actual permission and interest of all those involved, not to misuse any of the information obtained or discovered, moral responsibility maintained, and duty towards participants and protection of rights of people. And all these ethics must be honored totally at all times, except perhaps some extraordinary circumstances of national international calamity where some disclosure may become necessary. I'm not going to read this through. These are the listing of many, many codes of ethics which have come about in the last, let's say, 5 to 6 decades. Nuremberg Code, Medical Association Declaration, Belmont Report, all of them. So all these PPTs and the background material are available. I would request the fellow researchers to go through many of them. They are available. Some of them are online, some of them in the library. But it is suffice to say that so many codes of ethics have come about, and still we are talking about the need for codification or new codification or regulation or direction of ethics. So we can understand that mere statutes, laws, and procedures listed are not adequate. Probably some kind of ongoing education and appreciation is necessary. And that is where perhaps this attempt by UGC has come in at the right time. Again, the essence of codes and policies, I don't want to be reading each one separately. I'll just read only the headline and one or two key points. Honesty. Again, So many times explain, mention, but again, the question of interpretation. But when you go into details of it, which talks about honesty in reporting data, reporting results, reporting methods, and in publication. Meaning that don't fabricate falsified data. Sometimes what happens in the urgency, outliers data are trimmed out without even discussing the genuine reasons with even the supervisor sometimes and many times in the paper. And again, certain statistical techniques which we use, right, may not be appropriate, but we just camouflage by using 3, 4 techniques and then choose 1 or 2 to expound our cause. Objectivity. Again, it's a very, very important aspect where when it comes to design of experiment, data analysis, then expert testimony, other aspects everywhere, minimizing and preferably avoiding completely bias or self-deception is what is required to be objective. And disclosing personal financial interest, which has come about in the process of research, is also very, very important to make sure that we have been very, very objective all through. Integrity. Keep all the promises, agreements, act with sincerity, consistency, and thought action. Now, when we talk about honesty, objectivity, integrity, somewhere people say, yeah, mostly we are objective, most of the time we have integrity, and that's nothing like most of the time. Pardon me for saying it. There is nothing like half pregnancy, anything. Either one is pregnant or not. So that way, either you are in it or you are not in it. Again, carefulness, errors, negligence, keeping of data, and keeping research data and also the research notes for at least 8 to 10 years is very much necessary so that it is not only helpful to the individual or the other researchers to do further research based on the research already conducted, but also for the individuals themselves to go back and revisit and then confirm and reconfirm the basis, right? And use it for any purposes. Openness, unfortunately, in the research community, data is not shared, ideas are not shared, everybody is suspicious of the others. And being open to criticism and new ideas is a hallmark of researcher because the researcher is supposed to be open-minded and be willing to stand to criticism, to look at it dispassionately, detaching himself, coming out and looking at himself as we do it in NLP techniques. So this is very, very important to be as open as possible. And respect of intellectual property, giving credit where it is due, proper acknowledgement of all the contribution, sometimes never knowingly plagiarize. That means unexpected creep in. So it is very, very important. There are tools available now. So before the draft is finalized, it becomes necessary to go through whether without our knowing that any extract we have taken from somewhere, that origin is suspect. And while conducting the review of literature, we must acknowledge the contribution of other people in the field of relevant prior work. And it also serves as a benchmark for checking those contributions and the genuineness and veracity of the same. And finally, responsible publication. Avoiding wasteful, duplicative publication, publishing same paper with some modification in multiple journals without telling the editors, submitting same paper to different journals. So all of them. And most importantly, responsible mentoring, respect for colleagues who are involved in the research process, the students, subordinates who help us, who themselves will become researchers later. So we should be able to set an example to them by being responsible, by being responsive to them, and not discriminating the colleagues and students on the basis of our presumptions and assumptions on the basis of sex, race, or ethnicity, or whatever. Then protection, we talked about protection of data, protection of material, and protection of human subjects. We talked about informed consent. And similarly, if any animals are to be used in any of the researches, the animal care also becomes important. Competence. The word is pronounced so many times, grossly misunderstood, misquoted. Maintain, improve professional competence, expertise through lifelong education learning. Many times people said, PhD aa gaya, finished, my life is done. And that is where really the life starts. So the lifelong education learning is very, very important. And then only the professional competence can not only be maintained, but enhanced to one's own benefit and for the benefit of other researchers. Social responsibility, all whatever discussed so far talks directly, indirectly about social responsibility, that we should be doing things for social good and be relevant. And legality, very much necessary. If people are able to self-regulate, then legality doesn't even come into the picture. But unfortunately, legality is necessary. Laws are required because self-regulation many times fails for multiple reasons. But we are not going into that now. So all this relationship between courts, ethical practice, and the law is very, very complex. It is difficult to understand. We can sit for 2 days. We can also have another 20 hours, 30 hours of class, but it's not enough. And everything becomes in order, right? Will it become by applying courts and law? Not necessarily. Because all these codes and laws, whatever we have got so far, what we are going to frame, are general in nature. And they fail to provide many times clear operative guidelines in complex specific cases, where judgment may be subjective based on the research ethics committee itself, who is going to sit and evaluate what has been done is right or wrong. In many areas, the codes and laws are not specific about research practices. And even research practices which are good in certain circumstances, in certain disciplines, may not be good enough in some other disciplines. And particularly when the research happens to be in a multi-domain area where 2, 3 domains come together and we need to have comprehension of all the domains for research. And there's always the question, what is legal but not ethically correct? The example of practice of Nazi Germany may have been legal, but were clearly immoral. That is why for the last 40, 50 years, we have been grappling with a lot of codes, laws, rules, mechanisms, and probably it is one more attempt at the right time that we are trying to have with the UGC initiative. And our DSU has taken up the cudgels, and right away we are moving forward. And my sincere thanks to Professor Rashi Narendra for having given me this excellent encouragement opportunity, and to Dr. Banga sir and Nagaraj Subbarao, and particularly Nagaraj Subbarao, Rahul Dige, our registrar sir and VC sir. In the last many years, they've had a substantial impact influence on me for their vision and daring to experiment new things for the collective good. And that gives me enthusiasm, motivation, not because of the occasion I'm saying it. I've really felt that I have been able to learn a lot of things in the last so many years. And working with them is very exacting. And that is why it is exciting. I suppose the partnership will continue. Be safe, be secure, all of you and family. God bless. So any clarifications, questions, I'll see to the best of my understanding we can discuss. Shall I put off this, switch off this PPT?
Yes, sir.
Imtiaz, so chat box, can you make it open? What do I do? Our participants can ask questions also, need not be muted.
Yeah, participants, please ask any questions that you have.
Yeah. Go ahead, sir. Madam Shailaja, yeah, please go ahead. Ask your question. I think she has to be unmuted or something. Yeah.
Any
Good
question?
morning, sir. Good morning, sir. Can I continue?
Yeah, sure.
Yes. So the session was really very useful. One small thing, sir, and UGC is insisting on good and what do you say, uh, without plagiarism papers. Why can't we have some good softwares? I have faced a lot of issues when we had to check for plagiarism online. So, do you have any idea whether we have any online software where we can check the plagiarism? Hello, sir.
Sir, you will be answering?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Krishna Kumar, sir, will you be answering this question, sir? Madam, the plagiarism software questions we'll be addressing in the last session, ma'am. So we'll be describing to you all the tools that are available online.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
So in the last session tomorrow, ma'am,
Sure.
yeah,
Thank
6th August, Dr. Pratima Guru Prasad will be addressing on plagiarism. Also, ma'am, whenever you're publishing, it's always better you look at the list of the predatory journals. So the predatory journals basically tell you, I mean, you should not be publishing in those list of journals. There, the content is not very authentic. So, any other question?
Ma'am, I want to ask one question.
Yeah, tell me.
Actually, I had collected some of the data from the hospital related to my research work,
Okay.
and based on the results which I obtained, I have I have made a paper and submitted it to one of the journals.
Okay.
The reviewers are happy with the results and all, but they are expecting me to share the data. However, when I consulted the hospital authorities, now due to the data privacy regulations and all,
Okay.
I am not getting a what you can say certificate from the hospital data regarding the sharing of the data. So now
Okay.
in this situation, what can be done?
But have you concluded something using that particular data?
Concluded as in, ma'am, my findings are suggesting some of the things like which how the healthcare can be improved using the machine learning.
Okay.
So a few results I have obtained. Yes, I cannot. This is not the right platform where I can discuss out my results.
Okay.
But yes, definitely it is remarkable. Now the review comments which I obtained from the journal reviewers, they seem to be excited, and even they are like, yes, it is very much needed in India, but they expect me to share the data. So I'm held up at this situation.
Okay, okay. So, Maybe did you find out from the hospital authorities whether
Actually, ma'am, from the hospital authorities, the stuff was like I was provided the
labels or
data
something? Yeah.
that only it is for the research work, and that too I must thank Dr. Banga because of his influence. Because initially, as you know, because of the data regulation rules, it is like no hospitals share the data.
Okay.
Just because of his influence and his these things,
No,
somehow I
what
had
you
got
can
the
do
data,
is,
but I am not having the permission right
yeah,
now.
but what you can do is maybe you can have some kind of a disclosure that it is only for the reviewers, but you will be not putting any of it in the publishable material. So that also can be done. You
Okay.
will not be putting it in the paper. I mean, for everybody to see, but to
No, no, ma'am. Now my concern is because if I send the data to the reviewers, I cannot be very sure of. I cannot take a certificate from them that you will not be sharing
no,
it,
no,
the
no.
data and
I
all
feel
that.
I feel you can write to the reviewers telling that.
Yes, I have now. I have. It's been nearly 2 3 months. I have written this thing that due to the rules and regulations, I'm not able to share the data. Please suggest any of the things where I can make it available to them, but not for all.
Hmm.
So, but they are not means after that there is something complete silence. I have not obtained any kind of reply from them.
Okay, wait for a
So
reply for them. Otherwise, then go to a reputed journal.
no, that's what, ma'am. Actually, like just now you told about that we should be aware of the predatory journals and all that. Now, the journal which I am referring to is a elsewhere journal, the medical journal which is published by India.
Okay.
So it is one of the very reputed journals. But since I got a cold reply and since it's already 3 months, now I am in a dilemma whether to take out my paper from that journal and to submit it to some another journal. Now I am in a like crossroad kind of a situation.
No, one more attempt you make in writing because since it's a good journal, normally IEEE and all those things take at least a year's time, for
That's what, ma'am. Actually, I had submitted my paper in December last year, December 2019. I
Okay.
got the first review somewhere in March. Then the second review was in May related to the data sharing. After that, it is a silence. Now I do not know what else to do. So I
Maybe
needed some.
see, I mean, you try to get around where specific any comments are there. Maybe just share one or two images if necessary, and then the rest you keep it to yourself. Better not to share everything.
Okay, so
So,
okay, you mean to say like whatever
selective
data I
sharing.
have, I can just give a.
Selectively just to please them that you have submitted some authentic records, so that you can do maybe that also is there. Because
Okay,
usually with IEEE, I did that when I had my findings. So
okay,
they wanted some reference. I told them everything I cannot put it because it is basically done for defense. So a
okay,
part of
okay,
it they asked me to put. So that's all I did, and that really does not convey much of the information. But that was enough
okay.
for the reviewer.
Okay, 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 ma'am. Okay, this is a good suggestion which you are giving me. But what I was thinking is like whatever my results are there, maybe if I share the complete data and then they will be cross verifying the results or something.
Not
So
really. They don't cross verify. It is only some
okay, okay,
doubts
okay,
they will have, specific doubts. So that's all they'll be clearing. That's all.
okay, okay. So shall I put up a mail again to these people that the some selective part I can share with them?
Surely, yeah.
Okay, 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 okay.
Krishna Kumar sir, you will take over the thing. Any questions? Any questions to sir?
Um, can I ask a question?
Hello? Yeah, yeah.
Hello, good afternoon, ma'am. This is Shama Jain, PhD scholar from DSU.
Yeah.
Ma'am, I am working in an engineering institute in Bangalore itself.
Okay.
So my question is, sometimes when we going to present a paper in any conference, so for getting any financial sponsorship from the college, they ask us before going, like they want to sanction some OD, or if suppose some financial they want to help us, they ask to give our paper to them. So is it fine before presentation if we give them our paper? Is we should give, or we should tell them no, we can't give like this?
For this is for which particular forum you are talking about?
Ma'am, I am working in an engineering institute. So
Okay.
OD purpose, on duty purpose, when we are sanctioned, we are taking some leaves. If we are going outside of the Bangalore, so we need for 3 days or 4 days sometimes to go.
Okay.
So they tell if you really want to earn OD, otherwise it will be LOP. So for that they ask us to give us a paper. Okay, you need to show us the paper. What is the quality of? Only that then time we will apply your.
Just give them the front page of the abstract. I think that should be good enough.
Okay, not the full paper now.
No, content, I would actually, you have to keep somewhere, especially when you are publishing your thesis, you don't want uh, to be, I mean, you should keep certain amount of data for your thesis. That's the
Actually,
main thing.
actually in their HR manual, they have wrote it very clearly. Ki if you really want to have OD or if you want to help take any financial help from the institute, you need this kind of
Just
criteria
give
they have
them the
put in their HR
abstract and
manual.
the front page, that should be more than good enough. I think that should be fine.
Okay, okay. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Madam, good afternoon. This is Manu. I'm a PhD scholar in DSU, Management Department.
Yeah.
My question is, while we doing the data collection, do we need the copies of the data collection which we collect from the people?
Yeah, sir. You must have copies of all of that.
Okay. Even actually, my area is the marketing.
Okay.
I'm doing
Survey,
research.
you're doing some surveys, sir?
Yes, sir, survey retailers. For that, I cannot use the Google form and all. I need to go visit all the retailers and write down all their points in the paper.
But
Do
you
I
better
need to?
keep, sir, because especially I'm from the electronics side. I keep all my, I did keep all my experimental results, sir, because you never know what queries will come for your thesis. So it's better you have all the proof and everything, whatever
Oh,
you've done. So,
oh, okay, ma'am. Thanks.
yes, sir. So, sir, shall we conclude the session? Krishna Kumar, sir? Okay, I think sir is left. So thanks a lot, Krishna Kumar sir, for providing insights on the importance of research and publication ethics. Also on covering about the predatory journals and a list which must be checked by every researcher before they publish. And also on covering different aspects of philosophy and of course moral philosophy, which is the ethics part. So I think we'll conclude this session and start the next session at 1:30 with Dr. Reddy from Mahe. He'll be talking on scientific conduct and publication ethics. Thank you for participating. Thanks a lot for attending the session.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you, madam.
Okay.
Thank you,
Very
ma'am.
much there.
So thank you very much, sir.
So we will communicate the questionnaire sent to by all the people individually. I will write to them
Yes, sir. Surely,
as
sir.
an
Thank you
evaluation
very
of
much,
that,
sir.
and I'll keep informed of the
Yes, sir.
total.
Any help needed
questionnaire.
from my side, you can surely
No,
ask.
thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Very nice talking to you. You have been of a great help.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Thank you. So we will join at 1:30.
Yeah, we'll join at 1:30.
Thank you.
Imtiaz, sir. So we will conclude the session and join at 1:30.
Okay, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank
Wish
you.
all of
Thanks
you have
a
a
lot.
good lunch.
Thanks a lot for recording and
Thank you.
boosting the session on
Thank
YouTube.
you, Imtiaz.